When I was in middle school, my mom and stepdad would be fighting all the time. I mean, it was literally nonstop. It would always worry me because I would hear my mom talk about money, and I knew that my stepdad wasn't working at the time. They didn't tell me much, but I could hear everything that they argued about. And to be honest, sometimes I felt like it was my fault and the reason that they fought. I wondered what would happen if they did divorce. What would happen if one day it was a physical fight instead of a yelling match? It made my life extremely difficult. Now, you may not have the same worries that I had in middle school, but experiencing things that are uncomfortable, stressful, and even depressing is unfortunately a part of life for all of us. Things like disagreements with a friend, having your saved information erased on a game, dropping your phone on the concrete, waiting in lines at amusement parks. Those are the kind of things that we'd all rather not have to deal with. And why? Because of all the ways that it makes us feel. Sometimes the stuff we don't want to deal with is small and easy to move past. But sometimes the things we'd rather not have to face are bigger issues. These are things that stress us out or upset us in ways so big that we just don't know how to deal with them. Things like the police showing up to our house because our parents are fighting again. A sibling struggling with drugs and alcohol. A friend lying to us over and over again. Feeling like we can't seem to get out of our depression. Living through a coronavirus pandemic. These things are all so much more painful, and because of that, they can make our feelings so much more intense. When we feel that deep depression, hurt, anxiety, fear, panic, pain, or shame, well, I think if we're honest, most of us don't even know what to do. So if we all have different ways of dealing with what we feel, I want you to know that there's a name for that. It's called coping. Coping is simply how we deal with difficult circumstances, situations, or feelings in our lives. And there are usually two ways we deal or cope with what's happening in and around us: the helpful way or the unhelpful way. Helpful coping skills are so important. They give us ways to handle our emotions and process what we're dealing with so that we can not only feel better in the moment, but we can move forward in the future. Helpful coping skills are things that we do that are good for us. They're healthy ways to deal with our feelings. The thing is, people have been experiencing intense feelings and difficult situations since the beginning of time. And because of that, we can find a lot of examples and wisdom about how to handle those things in the Bible. There's real words written by real people who dealt with real feelings. And I want to jump into a book of the Bible that's found in the Old Testament, which is a portion of the Bible written before Jesus was born. This particular book is called Lamentations, because lamentation is a way that we express deep grief, and a lot of what is written in there is actually poetry. So let's take a look at what was written after witnessing this devastating situation in Lamentations. Okay, so let's break this down. First, in this passage, there's a reality check. The author made a choice to be honest about what they were going through, a choice to deal with how they felt. They acknowledged the painful stuff and named all the things that were hard for them in that moment: afflictions, wandering, bitterness, and feeling sad or a downcast. All those are words that describe deep pain, sadness, isolation, and feelings of despair that we can all probably relate to. But in the second part of this passage, something changed. The sad author who wrote the poetry didn't stay stuck in that sadness. Instead, they made another choice. This time it was a choice to do something to help deal with their feelings, a choice to take action, a choice to cope in a more healthy way. The author of Lamentations chose to cope by focusing on God's love and faithfulness. They made a choice to have hope by reminding themselves every time they woke up, got out of bed, and even had some breakfast, every morning is a fresh start. That's what God does for all of us. He gives us hope. Does that mean that things just suddenly get better? No. There will still be sadness and destruction all around, but they cope by what they're experiencing in a healthy way. They put things in their brain. They reminded themselves every day that God's compassion never fails, and with God's love, they didn't have to be controlled by their circumstances around them or their feelings. And the truth is the same for us. You can find a healthier way to cope that will carry you forward. You can choose to deal with how you want to with your feelings and put your trust in God, and He'll guide you in the correct path. And while coping in a healthy way may not fix everything or make it what we're dealing with go away, it can help us manage big, messy feelings. It might help us not make things worse. If we rely on our own understanding, we can always mess up the situation. But if we rely on God, He'll never do us wrong. So how do we do this? How do we choose a healthy and helpful way to cope? You can start by asking yourself 2 questions. The first question is, what's one part of my life that's difficult to deal with? Maybe you're dealing with a bad grade in English, or your dad left and it's been something you haven't been coping with in a healthy way, or you feel anxiety at school that leaves you upset at the end of every day. Whatever it is for you, just be honest with yourself about what's making life difficult for you. Simply naming and talking about what you're dealing with is the best place to start. And the second part is, what do I usually do when I feel this way? Do you avoid people? Do you ignore them? Procrastinate, blame, get grumpy? Do you seek help? Do you go on a walk? Do you pray? Do you practice deep breathing? For me, it's worship. What are your go-to coping skills? Are they helpful and healthy, or are they not good for you? Now, here's the encouraging part. You get to choose helpful ways to deal with what you feel. You have the power and the right to know that you can change for the better. So the next thing you can do is start choosing to change some patterns for the better. Instead of shutting down, talk to your landing leader. Instead of binging on Netflix, give yourself a time limit. Maybe take a 1-hour break from an assignment that's stressing you out instead of procrastinating for days. Set an alarm to remind you when your break is over. Try listening to a worship playlist, or just get down on your knees and pray to God. Whatever it is, just make one small step to a healthier way of coping. And remember, this isn't a one-time fix. Like the author of Lamentations said, you'll need God's help on a daily basis. So go ask for it. Let that be one of your first steps to help you with all this coping. If you're struggling to know where to start, maybe begin where the writer of the scripture began. Shift your focus from what you know to be true about God and how He feels about you. When you find yourself facing overwhelming feelings and hard challenges, focus on God. Ask for His help. Remember what it is to be true to Him. How does God feel about you? He loves you so much, exactly how He made you. He created you the way that you are. He gave you your abilities and the things that you love. He loves being your friend. He also promises that He's working for you in every way, and that you're going through won't be the thing that lasts forever. He loves you too much. He's with you right now. His heart is filled with love for you. He is your biggest fan. But when you're going through something hard, it can take up a lot of your brain space. So try to take over some of that space with these things that are true. That can be your first step towards coping in a healthy way.